Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Wall Street Skinny. I'm Jen.
I'm Kristen.
And we are two lifelong friends with a combined 25 years of experience working and teaching on Wall Street, here to give you the skinny on today, personal finance at long last, which we get more questions about than pretty much anything. And we are woefully unqualified to answer any of those questions. So we have brought on the Chief Certified Financial Planner for Domain Money, Katy Song, who is absolutely amazing. She is a mom, she is an entrepreneur, and she
Former
is
investment
an
banker.
expert. Exactly. Yeah. And so we're bringing her on to talk personal finance today. But before we get into that, Kristen, how have you been?
How have I been? What's
you
been
like
going
panic,
on?
yeah.
No, you know how it's like someone asks you how you've been and you're like trying to scan your memory. You're like, what have I done recently? Things have been good. I think I told you my mom's back, so that's exciting.
Yes,
and
that is awesome. Have you guys
know,
taken advantage of that in any real way? Have you gone out to
No.
dinner or something?
No, because she got sick. She literally, actually, this is funny. She
I'm
came
sorry to hear
over
that.
on Saturday because my oldest daughter goes to soccer Saturday, and every Saturday we get bagels. There's this pop-up bagel store, and they have like really, really good bagels. Actually, John was texting me this morning. He's like, "Do you want to get bagels for tomorrow too?" So we get them on like Friday and Saturday. Anyway,
I love a bagel. I'm such a bagel person these days.
Same. That's like,
wait, what's your favorite flavor?
I often go for salt, but I kind of like everything more. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I like salt, everything, and poppy. I'm not a huge sesame fan. That's the one I'm not a fan of.
So I've always been an everything bagel fan, but I've been leaning sweet lately, and I've been doing blueberry bagels. And let me tell you, there is nothing better than a blueberry bagel with either cream cheese or with peanut butter on it, because then it's like low key a peanut butter and jelly sandwich because you have the berry flavor.
What we do is every time we get it, there's like two different types of cream cheese. Actually, one of the types of cream cheese was like cup of noodles cream cheese, and then we'll do like scallion or
amazing.
I know it does. So I'll let you know on this Saturday how it is.
I like veggie cream cheese, where it's like a salad in the cream cheese. Yeah.
Yes. But then I always will put salmon and then capers on it. Like that's my breakfast.
Not a fish person. I don't do fish salmon in the morning.
But anyway, so back to my whole thing. So my mom comes over because, again, my husband had gone off with my oldest daughter, and I had the two kids, and like they're just wild. So my mom was like, I was like, can you come over? You can either walk with me to go to get bagels, because again, like that's basically my exercise is I walk places around here, or you can stay home. My mom, by the way, is like almost 80. I mean, she's in amazing shape, sharp as a tack, but like she's also almost 80. And so she's like, yeah, I'll come walk with you. So she comes with us. We come back, and she's like, wow, I feel awful. And because she was getting sick, she actually has like a full blown cold. Who knows if she got it from the plane or my youngest, who was snotty and disgusting when we were down in Florida with her. So anyway, so she's sick. So we have not seen her, but hopefully she's good this weekend.
Dude, I hope she doesn't have what I had. I had the flu. I got influenza A from my oldest kid. That took me down. I mean, I still sound nasal. It's been 2 weeks. I started running a low-grade fever like yesterday because of it. It was wild. So I really hope she feels better.
I mean, it's like I'm sitting here talking about, my bagel walk. How was your Turks and Caicos trip, my friend?
It was awesome. It's one of those things where, you know how when you find a really good restaurant in Manhattan, you're like, oh my God, everybody needs to know about this. Then you're like, I don't want to tell anybody about this because it's going to get too crowded. Yeah. We found this hotel in Turks and Caicos that's on a private island off of the mainland, and it is the best place. And it's a direct flight from Charlotte, and it's so easy to get to. And you go there on this boat ride, and you're on the boat. And I swear to God, I think in my previous life, I was like one of those dogs that live on boats. I was like a boat dog, because my favorite thing
did not think that's where that sentence was going.
No, there's nothing I love more than having my face in the wind like that on a boat. And there's like, you can't look at your phone. You can't, it's very meditative being on like a fast, and this sounds like such a bougie thing. Like, I love nothing better than a private shuttle to a private island. But you know what I mean? Like, it could be a rowboat. I don't care. Like, being on a boat with the wind in my face, nothing better. So
I am the opposite. It's funny because, again, I know that I'm now like a broken record just talking about Shogun. And it literally is my personal hell, because in the very first episode, you see this, again, the main character, John Blackthorne or whatever.
Yeah.
Blackthorne on a
AKA
boat.
the guy who stole Tom Hardy's life. He's like a taller Tom Hardy and sounds exactly like him.
Is Tom Hardy the one who's dating Zendaya?
No, that's...
Who's dating Zendaya?
That's Tom Holland.
Okay, but they're as close.
Tom
don't even know who
Hardy
Tom
is
Hardy
like the grizzled British guy from Mad Max. He played Bane in Batman, The Dark
I don't know who
Knight.
that is. Okay.
Yes, you definitely. He
Oh,
was
The
in
Dark Knight, I know.
Inception. He was in
Okay.
Inception
I'll
as well.
have to look him up. Hold
He
on.
was the
What's the name?
villain in The Dark Knight Rises. Tom
Tom
Hardy.
Hardy.
He played Venom.
Oh, I see
Now
what
look
you're
up
saying.
Tom Holland, who is a male ballerina and gymnast.
Which, by the way, I mean,
he's an incredibly talented dancer, but just a little bit of a different vibe.
It's an interesting, again, him and Zendaya, because I think Zendaya is like the most beautiful human being.
The perfect human. I
on
totally
the
agree.
face of the planet. I'm like, how are you? You are perfect in every way. Like, she's gorgeous. She seems like super kind. Like, she just every single thing. And he's cool, but he's like, I don't know.
But
I feel like she should be like
makes
Brad
me
Pitt,
like her
like, back in
even
the day.
more.
That's true.
He's
That's
like
fair.
he's like short, funny, like again, very skilled at ballet.
Yeah.
Oh, she's definitely taller than he is.
Yeah.
But I love it even more that she's dating someone who isn't like conventionally.
It like makes her even.
It makes her even like,
cooler.
Of course you are. Like, damn it, Zendaya. Like, couldn't you just be dating like, Jacob Elordi or something predictable like that?
Well, I think at one point they did date. They did. Yeah. When but sorry. So back to the whole boat thing, because he was at one point in the show. You see him, and it's like just this boat. Like, oh, again, I cannot imagine being in like the 1500s. Is that when this takes place?
Now you're asking hard questions. Let me see. When did Shogun take place? Around 1600.
Okay. So there is no more hell, in my opinion, than being on a boat in like the 1600s. And
in like the doldrums, right? Because they were stranded at sea. There's no wind.
There's no food.
It's like,
there's no water.
You have scurvy.
At one point in the show, I think was he talking to Mariko, and she said, do you have a family? And he's like, yeah, I have a daughter back home who I've never met. Who I've never met. And she's like, oh, you're serving your queen well or whatever. He's like, no, I just did this because, the open, like the horizon. I need to be on a boat.
Yeah, I cannot imagine being an explorer. Yeah, that does not suit. Also, it's funny because I think a lot of millennials joke about the fact that we were raised with this outsized fear of quicksand because there was like quicksand and everything. I have like a very legit fear of scurvy. And I think it's because I'm probably at risk of getting scurvy. I do not eat or drink anything citrus related. No. It's like you need vitamin C.
Oh,
from
it's vitamin C, not vitamin.
Yeah. D. I get plenty of vitamin D. I live in Charlotte. It is beautiful and sunny outside. I have vitamin D in abundance, and I take like vitamin D supplements and stuff like that. But yeah, no, the scurvy. My diet since I got home from Turks and Caicos has been leftover hot dogs. I've somehow managed to go to Chick-fil-A twice in 72 hours, and I don't remember really leaving the house during that time. So like it's almost mathematically impossible. And like mini ice cream cones, those mini drumstick things where it's just
that.
Oh my God, where it's just the end of the ice cream cone, which is the best part of the entire ice cream experience. Kristen, did you used to go to Dairy Joy back in Weston?
My favorite was the coffee
creamsicle.
No, the coffee and berry swirl was the best.
Interesting. I had the creamsicle swirl, like the orange flavor and the vanilla, and you get it, not the pointy cone, the cone that's made of styrofoam.
Yeah.
No. Sugar cone is the pointy one.
Oh, yeah. No. I know what you're talking about. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, the fake cone. Like the fake cone. It's the best, though. And it had those strategic little wells, those little reservoirs around the top, like the section compartments on the Titanic, except they go all the way to the top because they were engineered by a genius. Anyways. All right. So this was a super random rant. Let's
about ice cream cones. Important stuff. And
let's get
Jen
to
wanted to be a dog in another life.
So let's bring on Katy. And Katy is, again, absolutely incredibly talented. I think you guys are going to learn a lot from this. And we will put a link into the show notes for Domain Money, which is the financial planning service for which she is the chief financial planner. So we're really excited to have this conversation. And they are just an awesome company, and we are big believers in theirs. This is not an ad. # not an ad. We love them, and we think they're amazing people, and we really believe in what they're doing. All right, let's do it.
Awesome.
So today we are joined by Katy Song, who is the chief financial planner for Domain Money. And we get so many questions all the time about personal finances. And it's funny because everyone assumes if you work in the financial services industry that you must be a wizard with personal finances. And I find that actually the exact opposite is true. We actually got a question today on our social media from someone saying, hey, why aren't all investment bankers richer if they're helping other people manage their money? And so it's more timely than ever that we are bringing on Katy to talk about personal finance. So Katy, would you mind first just please walking us through your background with an eye towards essentially how you became interested in both finance and then ultimately a career as a financial planner?
So thank you for having me today. I went and got my MBA from UC Berkeley and graduated in 2002. And when I was in school, I remember asking all the people in there what they thought the toughest job to get was. And it was like consulting or investment banking. So consulting wasn't really my jam. I was really good at math and accounting. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this investment banking thing. 2002 was not a great year to be looking for a job. But I joined Citigroup. I joined their tech banking division in San Francisco, but spent a lot of time in New York, traveled globally.
So like right after the dot-com bubble, you were in tech banking.
I was. Luckily, it was like semiconductors and software, so it wasn't the startup land.
It wasn't tech of tech now because the tech industry was like just forming.
Exactly. So it was a great place to be. It was super exciting. I loved investment banking. It was really, really hard, as you guys know. And my daughter was born in 2007, and I traveled a lot for work. And she refused to take a bottle. So as moms, like, do you make that decision of like, do I jump on a plane to India and my child starves? Or do I find another career and pivot and find something that works a little bit better for my lifestyle? Right. So I left investment banking, and through UC Berkeley, I did a bunch of informational interviews. Okay, I have my MBA from Berkeley, and I was an investment banker for 8 years, and I had no idea what a certified financial planner was.
Right.
At all. I was like, what is this thing, financial planning? I was sitting at this place called The Grove in the Marina in San Francisco. And I met this woman and she's pushing in her stroller with her second child and she's all happy. She runs her own business. And I'm like, what do you do? I need to do what you do. And we talked about financial planning and what it meant to be a certified financial planner. And I was sold. So I started taking the CFP classes online during nap times when my daughter was sleeping. I started working for this woman, kind of ghostwriting plans and building her financial model because I've done plenty of modeling in investment banking. I took the test in 2008. Because of investment banking, I was really lucky. They called my managing director and he vouched for my hours. So I became a CFP automatically, because to be a CFP, you have to have a bachelor's or higher. You have to take the test and pass, and you have to have 2,000 professional hours, which is essentially 2 years worth of work experience. I was lucky that my banking experience counted towards my professional hours. So I became a CFP right away.
Here's a dumb question. When you say 2,000 professional hours, I'm assuming it's in a related industry. It can't be like 2,000 professional hours working at Chick-fil-A, or how does it work?
It's pretty specific. Like you have to be able to prove that you met certain criteria that the CFP board establishes. For example, you have to have done like analysis. You have to have presented to clients. You have to have presented plans. You have to have helped them implement them. So I could prove that I did all that on the company side for investment banking, but you can't work at Chick-fil-A or Gap.
Got it.
Yeah.
Oh, the Gap.
It's so, it reminds me when I was like trying to switch my major and I needed a stats class. And they're like, well, organic chemistry counts as stat. Like it counts. It's the same thing. So sure, you can fulfill that with this thing. Investment banking, you are doing those analyses, but it just seems like it's such a different application of it.
It's applying it to like personal life though. So it's almost so much more interesting. So like when you kind of do the modeling or the planning for yourself, you're like, oh my gosh, this makes sense. Like there's a framework to it. The CFP curriculum is really great at creating a framework for you to follow in order to there to be consistency and quality throughout the profession. Not everybody follows it, but.
What exactly is a financial planner?
So a certified financial planner is a designation given by the CFP board. So to call yourself a certified financial planner, they don't let you call yourself a CFP. You have to say you're a CFP practitioner or certificate. So it's like a trademarked term.
Like realtor versus broker.
Yes, exactly. So like, are you a CPA or are you an enrolled agent? Can you do tax prep or are you actually a CPA?
Got
So
it.
that's the difference there. So
Can we
the
actually,
financial,
sorry, can you like define these?
yeah, so I'm kind of saying a little bit from personal experience because I'm not a certified public
Yeah.
accountant, but that's what a CPA stands for. And a CFP is a certified financial planner. So my experience with CPAs is, you talk to them once a year, maybe twice a year. If you have somebody who's super proactive, a lot of what they look at is in the rearview mirror, right? So like if you're doing your 2023 tax return, you're filing it for April or October. So your interaction with your CPA is usually pretty limited on the personal finance side. On the personal finance side for a certified financial planner, my goal is to be my client's first call. Anything like my car just broke down, should I repair it? Do I get a new one? Hey, I think I'm considering a job change. Can I afford to take this different compensation package? What am I leaving on the table? To, we're thinking about having a third kid. Am I crazy? Like, can I afford this? What does it mean for like the rest of our goals if we do this? It's a different skill set for sure and a different touch point with clients.
Got it.
Okay, so you talked about the licensing requirements in order to be designated as a CFP practitioner. Dumb question. All these people out there who say they're financial planners, do they all have to have this designation in order to be able to fulfill that role? Or is this like an elite level of financial planning?
It's the gold standard. So it's kind of the elite level of financial planning. If you can pass the CFP test, you're no dummy. Like it is a hard test. I feel like I've taken lots of hard tests and I'm a pretty smart person, but I found that the test was pretty hard.
How does it compare to like the Series 7 or something that you'd have to take for investment banking?
I mean, Series 7, you just memorize, right? You memorize, you regurgitate, and then you forget it all. I think we've all been there.
We've all been there. Right.
For the CFP test, you have your 17B or your 12C calculator, and you're sitting there with case studies, calculating the retirement plan based off of like a narrative you've been given during the test.
Got it.
So I heard that the test has gotten easier over the years. It used to be 3 parts, and then one section was all questions that they were testing out. So it was really hard. And I started with that and I was like, oh my God, I think I'm going to fail this test. And then it turns out the next 2 sections were like what I expected. So I did fine. I passed it, which was great. So, I mean, there are a lot of financial coaches out there. There are a lot of people who, I mean, you guys see social media and YouTube. There are a lot of people out there who give financial advice that literally have no training in it. It's not to say that they don't always give like terrible advice, but it's between like, are you going to talk to like the woman standing in line at CVS or are you going to talk to the pharmacist?
So if someone is starting out, they like listen to this podcast, or like, this is what I want to do. They take their exam and they don't have those 2,000 hours. What happens in between that time? Do they then have to go out and start to get clients to then work with them to then build that 2,000 hours and then they kind of get that stamp of approval? Is there like any CFP and training distinction, or how does that work in between as they're working to get that?
I think you guys know the financial services industry pretty well. There's a lot of fear and there's a lot of kind of black box in order for people to pay a lot of money for financial advice. The primary place that people go to get these hours is at one of the big institutions.
Got it.
And they tend to have like training programs. They'll also help you get some of your series designations, but the majority of them are really focused on investment management. So in the industry, and this is why I think it's so broken, the whole focus is on AUM. That's how you make the money. And that's how you charge clients thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars every single year. And sometimes they'll throw in the planning on the side. It's usually not the focus. So a lot of financial planners don't do just financial planning. They also do the investment management side of the business. So when you're starting out, a lot of people will go to Merrill or Vanguard. There's a decent amount of tech startups now, like fintech, that are hiring financial planners because they're realizing, oh, people want answers to questions, not just a portfolio that they're going to, freak out about on a daily basis. But you could go work for like a smaller shop. Like you could go work for a registered investment advisor. You probably will have more access to clients and kind of seeing that client facing side of the business. But it's a lot like investment banking because you're going to continue to do the analysis part, do the meeting preparation, build the financial plan, and then hopefully get to sit in on client meetings and be able to like respond to client questions. I'm not sure that you get that level of exposure when you work at Goldman, like in wealth management.
Yep. Got it.
Can you talk to us about exactly what a financial planner does, what the business model is writ large, and then ultimately what you are doing that's different from the conventional model?
Yeah. So like I was saying, the normal business model is AUM. So you can call yourself a fee-only planner and charge AUM. So what I have done, and this has been my whole career as a CFP, so for like the last 15 years, is I charge a flat fee. So there are not that many flat fee financial planners out there. I'm a registered investment advisor, so I'm part of the SEC. I've got my stuff through FINRA, but I don't custody any assets. So that business model is very unique. There are not that many people that do it because the industry makes money off of AUM. So why are you going to turn away an annuity stream where you're kind of like fleecing people on an annual basis for sometimes relatively little work versus actually having to plan and critically think and help tons of clients versus just limiting your book of business to 100 clients. So like I have 700 clients because I'm not sending out quarterly reports. Like I don't custody assets. I will give them investment specific recommendation as part of the plan, but I'm not charging them AUM. We charge a flat fee. We have 3 different levels of financial plans. And again, I've been doing this for 12 years. I know it works. So we have a 1-page plan, a strategic plan, and a comprehensive plan. So like as your life gets more complicated, you kind of move up the scale. That's again, pretty unheard of in the industry because like I was saying, most RIAs and most wealth managers, they charge an AUM and they kind of throw the planning in for free.
What are the AUM charges like? Because we always talk about at the institutional level what a hedge fund charges or what a private equity firm charges, and it's 2 and 20. What are those AUM charges usually like?
They're usually 1% or less. So I have clients that range from having negative net worth to having $20 million. So some of my clients are going to sleep better at night having an asset manager. So a lot of the times I will help them find one or I'll sit on their quarterly calls with them because I'm kind of the translator between, you know, what the client really needs and wants and the language spoken by their money manager. Sometimes it's hard for the clients to understand it. So I'm kind of their spokesperson. In a lot of occasions where I will work with an asset manager and the client already has a plan, they know what their retirement goal is. They know like about saving for college. They know about the house, maybe buying a second house. Sometimes we'll get a discount on the AUM. Maybe it'll be 95 basis points or 85 basis points, but I don't think I've ever seen anything lower than 85 basis points. Unless you go kind of the robo intelligent portfolio route.
And can you walk us through why you think people need a financial planner in addition to just that asset manager, especially if they are in the financial services industry and know general market principles? Why do you think that a certified financial planner adds value on top of that?
So you could probably go on WebMD and diagnose yourself and come up with a health plan, but you're most likely going to be missing something. Again, it's having that framework. How do you frame the discussion and the analysis? I have my MBA. I was an investment banker and I didn't know anything about financial planning.
Yeah.
So the way that I start with clients and the way that I hope everybody starts with clients is you build a balance sheet. So we have to build a balance sheet, but we also have to know based off of that snapshot in time, how are you doing? And very rarely does somebody want to give an opinion on that. Like, no, you're ahead. You're ahead by $500,000 or actually you're short $300,000. But that's my job. My job is to give you like an honest view into like, okay, this is where you stand today. And our goal is to talk to you and learn from you and assess like your values and your priorities and tell me what you want your life to look like. Like, give me the picture on the top of the puzzle box and I'm going to put all those pieces together. So where an investment manager really is kind of doing their Monte Carlo simulations and saying what your portfolio likelihood of achieving X by Y date, we're looking at, okay, this is how much you make with your base salary.
Mm-hmm.
This is your base plus your bonus. This is your total comp with equity. What if you get commissions? What if you're self-employed and your income is lumpy? What if you're an attorney and you don't know if you're going to settle or you're going to go to trial? I mean, a lot of attorneys have very lumpy compensation depending on the year.
Yeah.
So helping provide clarity and insight into, at the end of the day, given your lifestyle, what do you have left to save and invest? And what are you spending? I mean, that's the big one. I don't know any asset manager who's going to go through what we go through to figure out, like, we get the CSV files from your credit cards in your bank, or we use like an aggregator to get that information. And we look at it like, okay, how much are you spending on groceries? What about travel? What about shopping? Is it crazy? Is it in line with an average family of 4 or for a single person living in a major city? And having that social benchmark is not what a normal asset manager is going to do. They're going to say, tell me what you spend, which nobody tells the truth about that. And cash flow is king. Cash flow is queen. Like, we need to know what your cash flow is. If there's seepage, and I do not judge my clients spending at all. Like, I have some clients that spend $6,000 a month and some that spend 60. It's all relative. But what I've noticed is that even the 2-teacher family versus the family making $2 million, the stress is there for both of them.
Right.
And the stress is really not knowing what's going on. And when you do a financial plan, you get to see it right in front of you in black and white. And you can compare apples to apples and be like, oh, you mean if I just made $30,000 extra, I could do these 4 things that I really want to do? And that can motivate people to, like, ask for a raise, change jobs, maybe create a side hustle so they can earn that extra money to achieve their goals faster.
Yeah.
And when you do a client intake, what kind of questions are you asking? You said it's, what are your goals? Are you thinking near term, long term? If you're talking to someone who's younger, how does it differ from someone who's maybe close to retirement age?
Yeah. So in the beginning of my practice, I focus on couples starting their lives together and families with young children. So that's always been my niche, and it kind of gradually will go out from that target client.
Was it across industries, or is it very specialized within like finance or entrepreneurship? Or
I don't specialize by profession, but there are a lot of financial planners that will be, I'll only work with optometrists. I'll only work with veterans. I'm a huge fan of the niche. But or niche, however you want to say it. So my niche practice was really that combining your finances and starting to have a family and wanting to buy a house. So I was agnostic what industry you were in. Just being in San Francisco, a lot of my clients are in the tech industry and a lot of entrepreneurs. So the kind of questions that I ask are pretty straightforward. I'm really looking at kind of a 1 to 5 year time horizon. In my opinion, it's a little silly to, I mean, we talk about retirement, but we're just trying to make it through, like, getting your kids potty trained, or like finding the right kindergarten, or, you know, getting them enrolled in camps for the summer. Like, how can you start thinking about, you know, when to take Social Security and when you should optimize that? So that's not my typical client. So the first question I ask my clients, like, I give them a bank of words and I want them just to circle what resonates. There's not a big friction point there. You look at the words, something sticks out to you, you circle it, and that's great. Both of my clients do it separately, then come together, see if there's an overlap. And that really helps me figure out, okay, what matters to you as a couple or as, you know, an individual? Like, what's driving you? Is it financial security and flexibility, or is it adventure and personal growth? Those are 2 very different people. And I'll have different recommendations based on that. And then the next page that I give clients are 2 questions. It's like, it's been an amazing year. What have you done? What does your life look like? So I get everything from, like, I got promoted at work. We took a trip to Europe. We built a garage with an ADU on the top. You know, you name it, it's there. And then the 5 years tend to be a little bit more aspirational. Like, we bought a bigger house so we can entertain family. You know, my in-laws came to stay in the ADU.
This accessory dwelling unit, for those of you who are not in the real estate parlance.
The numbers tell me a story, but who my clients are as people is what really drives the recommendations.
Got it.
When you say your recommendations, are the recommendations based on, like, you should be saving X percent, you should be limiting your spending to this? etc.? Is it like if you're going to go buy a house, it should only be up to this price? Like when you say your recommendations, what are the recommendations specifically?
Yeah, so I get super delineated. Like you could hand it to a monkey and they'd be like, okay, I can do this. So everything from, you have been spending $24,000 a month. That included part of your kitchen renovation and a really big trip to Disneyland. Those won't recur on an annual basis. Focus on target monthly spending of $18,000. So we have a target. Like we have to have a target. If we don't have a target, how are we going to know if you're being successful? So I get really specific there. There tend to be, especially in the spending, they're kind of the big three. The big three are food, travel, and shopping. How are you doing on those three? Is one of them your Achilles heel? There usually is. So focusing on where can we make the most impact? Although I understand the whole yeah, you've got 15 different subscriptions and you could save yourself $15.99 a month. Like that's not going to move the needle for most of my clients. What we're really looking at is behavior adjustment. If eating out is $4,000 to $5,000 a month and half of that is Uber Eats and delivery services, we have to look at that. Okay, why are you doing that? Is it for convenience? Are you actually eating the food? Is it sitting in your freezer? And being able to talk to the client about, okay, how do I make you happier? Because they're coming to me stressed out. And to me, that the opposite of stress is peace. So we're trying to find, okay, how do we live your life in peace? How do we spend your money where it matters most that you don't feel guilty? I don't want my clients to feel guilty about their money. Money's supposed to flow. It's supposed to go in and out. And then the recommendation about a house is really important. I mean, recently there have been some really crazy things on Instagram and TikTok of people suggesting that you can buy way more house than you can afford. Like, hey, somebody who makes $100,000 can afford $1 million house. No, you cannot. Just so you know, anybody listening out there who makes $100,000, you cannot afford $1 million house. So I get super specific, but about, how much you can afford to spend on a house. Yeah. Based on your lifestyle. So it's not just what a lender is going to lend you. A lender is going to lend you, 32 to 40% of your gross income. If you have a nanny and you have a pretty nice lifestyle, you're not going to be able to afford what a lender is going to lend to you. I don't want my clients to feel house poor. So I get, again, really specific. And I always show them the max because as I've learned over the years, somebody always comes back and they said, well, what about a $1.75 million house? What about a $2 million? I can get an extra bedroom. And then we kind of go back and we're like, okay, if you did this, it means you can't travel like you normally do, or you have to get rid of the nanny. And sometimes it's like, oh, well, the nanny's going to be gone in the fall anyway, because we'll be starting TK. Then we just need 6 months to bridge the gap. So I love that kind of problem solving and that critical thinking. And that's what makes being a financial planner fun.
I'm really curious because you deal so much with couples. How often do you find yourself having to almost play marriage counselor? It's one of the things that we get asked all the time is how do you identify a great husband, a great wife, a great partner? And we always say, listen, one of the things that was instrumental in us both marrying people who were in the financial services industry is that we had a shared understanding of our day-to-day lives. We had empathy for what each other was going through, but we also had similar ideas about finances, personal finances, and how the kind of lifestyle we wanted to live and how we practiced growing wealth in our own lives. I'm curious, do you end up dealing with couples a lot of the times where there's a little bit of conflict with respect to what one person's beliefs and agenda and values are on the financial spending and saving front versus the other?
Well, you guys are very unique. If you married people that are also in financial services and have an understanding of finance and kind of mutual goals, that's incredibly unique. That is not normal at all. Most people come and there's one person that's in charge in the finances and the other person is either too scared, probably has some money trauma from their childhood and has kind of put their head in the sand or defers to the other, which I don't think is, the financial planning process is an opportunity for us to bring that spouse or that partner in and help them educate and feel part of it and understand, because there can be a lot of conflict between the spouse that handles it all and knows it all and how they communicate it to the other one. So I'm really good. And I think it's maybe from banking and relationship management, being able to break down complex things into understandable bite-sized pieces so that even the spouse that is fearful or doesn't want anything to do with the money has some skin in the game and knows why we're making these recommendations. Like, is it for your retirement? Is it to buy a bigger house? Is it so you can take a better vacation or pay for college? There needs to be buy-in. And I'm pretty good at being able to ascertain what's going to make the difference in communicating that to a person who's maybe shut off from the finances in the family.
I also think it's kind of crazy to me, the stories people tell themselves about, like, I'm not going to understand the finance. They basically told themselves that story.
That's the story I tell myself about taxes deliberately because I don't want to be responsible for the taxes.
I outsource my taxes.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah. The thing is that you can't just go in and be like, here are the tactics. I find that with someone who is feeling like they're ashamed, like they feel stupid. They feel like they don't have the financial literacy that they should. I have a lot of clients that make a lot of money and ones that don't make that much money. And sometimes the ones that make more money feel even dumber because they don't know what's going on, or they feel like they should have figured this out by now. I recently had a founder of a company in his 40s, a very smart man, but he grew up really, really poor. And he's very fearful about money. We had a meeting scheduled last year and then he ghosted me, which happens. But then he came back and he's like, okay, I'm ready to meet. And I noticed that he was like renting a car at Enterprise. And I was like, why are you paying $1,500 a month at Enterprise? Is your car in the shop? And he's like, no, I don't have a car. I need to get a car. And I was like, well, you have $100,000 sitting in your savings account. Why haven't you bought a car yet? And he's like, because my credit score sucks. I was like, well, what's your credit score? And he's like, I don't know. And I was like, okay, well, let's go on myfico.org or .com. You can get a free one once a year. Let's go check it out. And he was shocked. He's like, you mean together? I'm like, yeah, share your screen with me. Let's go on and we'll do it together. He's like, okay, this is really scary. And I'm like, it's going to be okay. I promise you.
Aww.
So we did it. At the end, it says, we can't give you your score. You have to call this number. And I was like, okay, get your cell phone out and call the number. And he's like, right now? I'm like, you're never going to do it if we don't do it together.
Yeah.
So we did it together. And she said, I'm really sorry, but you don't have any credit. And I was like, okay, you don't have credit. He's like, I've never had a credit card. And I said, okay, let's go on Capital One. We got him a secured credit card. We set it up on auto pay. He put it on his Apple wallet so he could start using it. His credit limit's like $2,000. Right. And he said, he's like, I'm embarrassed that if somebody sees this card, they're going to know. I'm like, nobody can tell whether or not it's a secured card. And if you put it on your Apple wallet, they won't see anything. You'll just be
What does it mean to
scanning.
be a secured credit card, by the way?
It means that you're putting up the cash behind it. So that if you didn't pay your bill, so believe it or not, a lot of people who are probably not listening to this podcast either have bad credit or don't have access to credit. One way to start building it is to get a secured credit card.
I've never even heard of this. I mean, when I was trying to build credit, it was the kind of thing where like your parents opened up a credit card for you when you're 18 or 16 or 18 years old to start building that
And
credit.
they co-sign
right?
for you.
So
Yeah.
I yell at my sister-in-law all the time because she has never gotten a credit card. I don't think she had student loans and I don't think she has any credit. And there's no reason to not have it. And I yell at her all the time. I'm like, you realize you could
Elizabeth, if you're listening, get yourself a credit card.
I know. It
Get a
drives me
secured
insane.
credit card. Now we know we
drives
have the
me insane.
solution. You don't have to be
Like this
embarrassed.
is, by the way, for anyone who is listening, when you are young, get a credit card. You need to start building credit. Whatever. If you charge $5 and pay it, just start building credit.
And that's exactly what you do. The best thing to do is to put some kind of recurring charge and set it the balance to be paid every single month. So in order to establish really good credit, we're kind of getting a little off topic here.
No, this is on topic.
Okay.
Our listeners want to know because as competent as they may be in various areas of their lives,
People don't know this. Yeah.
hand to God. And I wouldn't have known this if I didn't have parents holding my hand being like, you must do this. A lot of people don't have parents and mentors like that in their lives. This is really helpful.
And again, Elizabeth, my sister-in-law, she's a Georgetown grad. She is brilliant, but she's also just like stubborn and won't get it and like doesn't understand that this actually can hurt her. Even though we tell her, she still is like, nope, not getting one.
Oh, my brother. I have an older brother and he got a credit card maybe last year. And he used to like walk down to the utilities with cash to pay his bill.
Stop.
Yes. Rich, if you're listening, you've grown a lot in the last couple of years. I'm proud of you.
Good job, Rich.
Yeah. So credit. So what you really want is to have 2 trade lines. So 2 credit cards out there. I usually recommend having like 1 cash back. And if you'd like to travel, have a travel card where you get some fun benefit like the first time you spend money, you get 60,000 points and you get a free ticket somewhere.
Yes.
You really want to optimize your credit. You want to have each of those lines for 24 months. So you got to start building that history. So what the credit bureaus really want to see is that you have access to credit and you pay your bill on time. When you start really getting into the nuances of, I'm going to apply for a loan and I need my credit score to be as high as humanly possible, then you always want to keep your usage of each card under 10%.
Okay.
But otherwise, like if you have a 0% APR card and you transferred a bunch of credit card debt over, your usage is going to be high. It's going to be 90%. That doesn't usually reflect really well, but in a way we don't really care because I'd rather my clients not be paying exorbitant interest charges and finance charges and use those 0% APR cards to kind of pay down any debt that they had coming into our relationship.
Right.
Got it. And how early in life do you think that people should engage with a financial planner? Because you're talking about, obviously, your clientele, which is couples coming together. My guess is that they're a little bit older, a little bit more established. I mean, in New York City, when we were working at the banks, it was like if you were married before 30, you were a child bride.
Yeah.
But I assume with this flat fee model that you were mentioning, there's access to this service for people who are much younger and much earlier in their careers. When do you think people should start?
I mean, our kind of threshold that we've set out of experience is around making around $100,000. So just from a price point standpoint, our least expensive plan is $2,500. And what we found is that it's from a percentage relative to your income, spending $2,500 on financial advice is a lot if you're making under $100,000. So that's kind of like the point that we think it makes sense for you to start having a planner. So the thing that I love about our business model is that our heavy lifting is upfront getting to know your financial picture. So you pay that one-time larger fee and we keep it super affordable to keep the relationship going. So normally we meet with our clients on an annual basis and we update the whole plan, but it takes us an hour to prep and we have an hour meeting. So we charge $500 for a financial update. So sometimes it's every 12 months, sometimes it's every 18 months, sometimes it's every 2 years. I do find that if we wait more than 2 years, we've missed some opportunities when it comes to like your savings goals or retirement or your investments or asking for raises or, spending too much in certain categories. But I'll never turn away a client that's done a plan with me. So sometimes it could be 5 years or 7 years. It's always interesting and fun to see the progress that they've made. But a lot of our clients want us more often than that. So we charge an hourly rate. So once you've done a plan with us, you're part of our family. So we charge $300 an hour. So it's really on-demand financial advice.
Got it.
Which isn't out there. Like even our kind of, quote unquote competitors, I guess, they charge this flat annual fee, but they charge it every year. And it's huge. And there's no way that they're putting in that much work every single year.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say like for investment banking now, and I know you did investment banking in 2002. Jen and I were in 2006. We were making like $60,000. Now the base salary for a new hire analyst at 22 is like $125,000. So it's crazy. And that's not accounting the bonus. I think like, especially for a new hire analyst, a lot of those people have not thought about retirement, don't know anything about like portfolio construct or any of that. Like even some of the basics of, you should be allocating this percent to equities or this percent to fixed income or any of that stuff. Like you're coming in and you're trained in, valuing a business and all that kind of fun stuff if you're going into banking, but you don't have any of the personal finance. Like no one's taught you that. So I actually think could be really helpful to have someone to sit you down and say, by the way, like you're living in New York City, it's expensive. This is how you should be thinking about your expenses. And also when you get your bonus, that's a big chunk of cash that you're going to get. What do you do with that now? So anyway, that's my 2-cent thing of like, I wish I had someone like that when I was 22.
I think that 22 is a little bit young though. I think that most of them don't want to hear what we say. I think that you have to be a little bit more mature to start thinking about, okay, this is where I want to be. The exception to that is like my favorite segment of clients, which is the first generation professional. So these are people whose parents did not have 401ks. They didn't have equity compensation. Maybe they worked 2 jobs. They were mostly like paycheck to paycheck, maybe. My clients can't ask their parents for advice and for guidance. And so they are thirsty for financial literacy and thirsty to like be successful and build wealth and be able to help take care of their parents someday. So that is usually a big motivator for a lot of younger professionals to seek out advice. But again, where do they go? Right now in the financial services industry, they don't meet the minimum requirements for a lot of investment managers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so it's either kind of DIY, but like at Domain, we're trying to scale what I do. And
Mhm.
we've got a team of 6 planners. So hopefully we'll keep getting bigger and bigger and help more and more people.
Yeah, I mean, I would disagree with you, Katy. I hear you on, I definitely think that those first generation earners are a really important population, and I can see them being 100% open to that advice. But I was not a first generation earner, and I wish I'd had someone.
Same.
My parents were like, "Oh, just a Fidelity account and the things, and okay, gotta go by," right? And I was like, I don't know what this means. I still don't even really know what a 401k is. I don't know what the difference is between a SEP IRA and a Roth IRA and all this stuff. It's weaponized incompetence on my part. I'm just like, I want to make as much money as possible and figure it out.
Then
down the
that other
line.
stuff doesn't matter. Yeah. In your
Yeah,
head, it's like,
Well,
then it
we
doesn't
just need to
matter.
have more
But it does.
conversations then, because I love talking about that stuff.
Well, no, but I'm the same way. I mean, my dad was an engineer. My mom was a school teacher. It's possible my dad is smart. He went to business school, like night school when I was little, but I don't think he ever sat me down and said, this is what you should do with like, I don't even, even if he told me, I don't think I'd listen to him. Cause I mean, I was still in the phase of like, you don't know what you're talking about, dad. Like you're
well,
so dumb.
and to your point, Katy, saying that population doesn't listen. We don't listen to our parents probably.
Yeah.
But
That's a good point. That's a good point.
But if we're paying for the service, right, I do think that I think that the problem is too many young people are going on TikTok to find out this information and saying,
Well, 'cause
hey,
they get
this
the
random
free advice.
influencer told me to
Yeah.
do this because it's free, right? And they look like they know what they're doing. They have a really smooth, slick, edited video. But if you're going to actually put some skin in the game and pay someone $2,500 to do this when you've earned your first $200,000 and you're 23 years old, I think you'll have much more success and a much higher effectiveness with that population than you think. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
No. I mean, I think that it's worth, just from like a human capital standpoint, I've been limited to bandwidth. So I have to kind of pick the clients that I like to
You're
work
like,
with.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just mean philosophically. Like from an
No, I
industry-wide
agree.
standpoint.
And I do think that you have to have some skin in the game, because if you're not paying for a financial plan, you're not going to value it.
1,000,000%. With anything, whatever you get for free, you don't value. Switching gears a little bit, we talked a lot about the spending versus saving balance at a very high level. When it comes to the saving standpoint, to what extent are you talking to your clients about specific investments that they might be making?
So I get really specific. So for example, if I have a client that is looking to buy a house, but based off of their income projections, it's going to take 5 years to do that. The rule of thumb in the financial planning world is that if you need any money within 3 years, it's to keep it liquid. And the definition of liquidity is no risk of loss. So if you're going to have no risk of loss, you're pretty much in a money market account, a CD, a high yield savings account. So if it's a 5-year time horizon, we want to balance out having it liquid, but also being able to take advantage of some growth. I mean, the market's done pretty well this year. If it were November 2021, it'd be a different story. We get specific enough to look at the client's balance sheet, see where they already have accounts. Do they have it at Fidelity? Do they have a Schwab? Do they have a Vanguard? Do they have a Betterment? And say, okay, let's open up a joint brokerage account and let's put $500 a month and let's put it in this index fund. So getting super specific based off where you have your accounts and how much should be going in, so that we can kind of balance out, making sure we have definitely enough down payment for that house, but we have the growth ability as well.
Got it.
I like to teach a woman to fish, eat for a lifetime. So I don't want to just say like, hey, put it in this S&P index. I want to explain why and say, okay, this is SPY versus VV versus the Schwab large cap index. They are the market. And what do I mean by that? It's 576 companies. It's a basket. This is the expense ratio. This is the Morningstar rating. Like, I want them to understand why we're making the selection that we're making, because it's much more valuable to me that if she goes on a walk with her girlfriends and is having a coffee, she can explain, okay, well, this is why I'm doing this. And maybe she can help teach them as well.
Are you making recommendations on execution timing and dollar cost averaging and things like that as well?
What I have found over the last 10 years is like, if you get too granular like that, people shut down. So
Okay.
a lot of times it's, let's put your money to work. You've been sitting on it for 18 months doing absolutely nothing, most likely in a Wells Fargo checking account, earning 0.01% interest.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's just kind of ripping the Band-Aid off and
Just buy
putting-
today. Close your
Yeah,
eyes, buy
let's
today.
just
It doesn't
get in
matter
there.
versus tomorrow.
Well, for a lot of the goals of my clients, the time horizon is 10 plus years. So is it really going to matter that you bought $10,000 a month over the next 6 months, or that you put all 60 grand in? It's going to be not even a rounding error.
Got
And
it.
one thing, because I mean, I'm the queen of just like things get in the way. So I'm like, I know I need to take my money out of my savings account, but like, or out of my checking account or whatever. I don't think I have a checking account. I think I just have a savings account. I never know what the difference is. Anyway, but the point is that
Wait, what's the difference between a checking account and a savings account?
One you
for
can write
Kristen
checks
here?
out of, hence checking.
Oh, okay. So basically, like if you have savings, is it usually in a checking account?
Usually at most like commercial banks, they make you open up both. So the checking account is like what your debit card is. So like a debit card that you have is linked to your checking account. If you have to pay a property tax bill or pay a house cleaner or a landscaper or whatever it is.
Or your credit card bill that you
the-
have on auto pay.
Yeah, or the DMV, like it's out of your checking account.
So I must have a checking account, not a savings account.
I'm sure you
but
do.
You may have both.
I don't know, maybe. But I guess the point was that, again, I am so lazy. And as Jen put it, it's almost like purposeful incompetence. Like I understand so much about the markets and all this kind of fun stuff. But like when it comes to actually taking my own savings or my own money and putting it into something, I never get around to it. Right. And so I loved when you were like, let's just call this guy on the phone now. Like, let's look up are you helping people actually like do it with them? Like,
Yes,
no,
yes,
we're doing it now or it's never going to happen.
That's
You're a
the fun
babysitter.
part. They share their screen thing, but if you've got 8 things on your to-do list and I can help you do 4 in a 5-minute span, you are going to feel so relieved and so good. So I'll say, share your screen with me. Okay. We're going to set
I love that.
this up so that we can pull $500 a month to your high yield savings account. We're going to set up an auto investment plan at Fidelity so that you're buying that index fund every month for $500 a month. You don't even think about it. It's going to be all set up.
Yep.
And then they just feel better. And they're like, oh
Yes.
my gosh, I feel so accomplished.
I love that. That alone is worth the price of admission.
Like I don't expect any of my clients to start day trading, right? I mean,
Uh-huh.
I just want to show them like, okay, listen, you've got this $7,000 sitting in your Roth IRA in cash. The whole point of a Roth IRA is tax-free growth.
Yeah.
We're not going to put it in some schlumpy value fund. We're going to put it in like the QQQ. Let's put it in like the NASDAQ index and just watch that thing grow. And so they don't even know how to do that. So I'm like, okay, share your screen with me. We're going to hit buy. It's a market order. Use a little calculator, put in 7,000. Okay, you get to buy 6 shares, whatever it is, and hit review and submit. And they're done. And they just feel amazing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that makes me so happy.
There
love
is that
that.
intimidation factor, and I really do think it applies whether it's high net worth, low net worth, high education, low education. There's just some intimidation factor about doing a trade, moving money around.
But
I
that's
don't know
why that's why I
but
feel like
it exists.
it's the financial service industry is broken. They have made so much money off of making it a black box and making you feel like you can't do it on your own, that you have to pay somebody else lots of money every single year to be taken care of. And I am calling them out on it. That's why I think that there should be more people that do the type of planning that we do.
Well, so let's talk about that. So
yeah.
what's the career path for the average person who's coming into the field of being a CFP? It seems like it's very self-starting, and that you go out, you get this license, you start this business, versus all the other areas that we've talked about where it's you're recruited into this, you network your way into this firm. How does that work?
I think at the larger institutions, again, I can't speak from personal experience, but I think from my understanding from people that we've hired from Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs is you do get recruited into it. And you do kind of follow that same pathway where you're kind of like an analyst-ish role, like a paraplanner role, and then you kind of evolve. But the evolution really seems to be mostly into the investment management side of the business. Like you have your CFP designation, but you become an investment manager or an asset manager rather than going like the pure planning route. Because like I said, most institutions don't charge for the plans. They just give them away as part of the investment management fee.
Yep.
Right.
So this idea of charging for a plan is somewhat newish, but it's what I call like real financial planning. So what is the progression? Usually if you're starting out in the very beginning, you're a paraplanner. So you have to learn like the math behind it, because garbage in, garbage out. Like you need to know what you're putting in here, what it's spitting out. I don't use cookie cutter financial planning software. Like I built our own models. Like
Cool.
Love that.
you guys know how to build models, and I know everything that goes in and everything that comes out. I've done all the math behind it. So I feel really comfortable with it. And so for us, there's no page left intentionally blank. We don't want to waste our clients' time. It's a matter of like making your time count, making the advice count, making it be applicable to the client's life. So from the paraplanner standpoint, they got to learn that part of the business and like, how do you deliver a plan? I think what makes an effective financial planner is really having the right EQ. Can you be empathetic? Can you understand where they're coming from? I think we talked about this way earlier on in our discussion. The person who comes in who has money trauma or has some kind of like blockage and they don't want to engage in this, you can't just jump in and start talking numbers. That's where I find that you have to have the ability to talk to them about, okay, so tell me about your childhood. Tell me about your parents. Like, what was your first experience with money? I mean, most people's first experience with money is spending's bad, right? Like you're not supposed to spend. And so like, if you start your relationship with money that it's bad, it's just going to evolve from there. So to me, there has to be a decent amount of reframing to show my client that they can choose their own path. They have to decide how they want to live and how do we get there, and that they're not their parents. That EQ comes with experience and listening. If you're not somebody who enjoys talking to people and problem solving, financial planning is probably not the right career for you.
Makes sense.
No, but it's so interesting. The combination of the analytical, but then the almost like therapist aspect of like getting in and understanding the psychology. And as you put it too, it's like some of the stuff is like behavioral, where you're spending all this money and buying Uber Eats. Like, why are you doing that? So many people, like, behavior change is not easy.
Well, a lot of it too is entitlement. People think I work really hard at my job and I should be able to go to the Caribbean every year. I should be able to go to Vail every year. I should be able to go to Hawaii every year. Why can't we? And they're mad. They're mad that they feel like they have made a lot of money and they feel like they can't afford to do these things they should be able to afford.
Say more about that. I think that's a really interesting human observation. It's not something I personally relate to, but I do see that in people. And I'm really curious to understand that better.
I think part of it is keeping up with the Joneses. Like everybody sees everybody else doing it. So they're like, well, how come he can afford it? How come they've got a new Rivian in the driveway and I'm driving a Toyota from 2014? And how come they're always, taking a family trip and we can't afford to do that? So again, like I don't know the other person's situation, but I've done 700 plans. So I have a pretty good data set to be able to compare. And a lot of the times the people that are spending don't necessarily have it figured out. They don't necessarily have their retirement on track. They don't necessarily have their kids' college plans funded.
Yep. You shouldn't be comparing to them. You should be comparing to yourself. You just don't know what the situation is. But I think especially these days where everything is online and you can see what every single person is doing and everyone's posting all these pictures. So you're like, well, this person's doing that. I should be able to do that.
And I do think it just goes back to something we talked about offline before the episode started, that comparison is the thief of joy, right? With all of these things in all steps of your career and all steps of your personal development, you're not comparing yourself to what someone else is doing. You're comparing yourself to what's the best version of you. One question we get a lot from our social media community is, what should I have saved by the time I'm 32? And it's like, who are you? Where are you coming from? What is your job?
Do you live?
What are your student loans? Where do you live? Like, what? The idea that there is some magic number at each stage in life of what you should have or have done is crazy. It's just,
I'm going to push back on that though. I'm going to push back on that. Just because
Why?
because I do think that you need to have a starting point. So getting back to what you're just saying about like, if you don't know where you are today, how are you ever going to know if you're making any progress? So you need to know your starting point.
You might have been
We'll go
working
back
for
to-
12 years,
Right.
or
I
you
was
just
gonna say, or the
graduated
doctor.
from business school
Yeah.
with $150,000 in debt, or maybe you're a doctor and you're just starting your career. So like each
So
of those
there's-
3 people has a very different starting point.
Very true. Very true. There is a test and it's in a book, like a model. And I use it all the time. And it's from The Millionaire Next Door. I don't know if you remember it from like the airport. It was a personal finance book. And he has a test in there. So the test takes your age and your gross income. And he divides your gross income by 10 and then multiplies it by your age and says that's what your net worth is supposed to be. If you have,
I gotta do this.
I'm like trying to do this, although right now I'm like, my gross income is zeros.
well, yeah, we're not making any money yet. So
so like when I have clients that have like a trust fund and they're living off like royalties and stuff, I will put in like what the investment income and the royalties are just to like
or
see.
if you're an entrepreneur, what you were making in your previous life.
I know. So like it doesn't work for everybody. It doesn't work in the case where like you just started making money because that like dividing it by 10, I mean, essentially it's saying that you've been making this much money for 10 years. So like that gross income number. In his model, if you are 2 times what your net worth should be, you're considered wealthy. And it's always just like a fun thing to go through with my clients. Like I can say all the reasons that it's a silly model.
Sure. But no, I didn't even know that there was something like this of like a supposed to. Right.
Yeah.
I am like the wealthiest person ever. I am div zero. Sorry, that was a really bad like Excel joke because again, like divide. Anyway, never mind.
The one thing that the model doesn't take into consideration is where you live. You could live in Indianapolis or London. The model doesn't care. It's just looking at your income. So if you're just starting to make money and you're just got out of medical school, it's going to say that you're really behind, which can be disheartening, but it can also motivate you to be like, okay, I'm not a resident anymore. Now I've got to go into practice and I'm going to make 400 grand. Great. Let's go. So I have some clients and I've noticed a lot in the legal profession. Like if they start making money, they have a lot of lifestyle creep.
Like it burns a hole in their pocket.
Finance, I think too. Finance also. You see how people in New York City.
Well, all of a sudden you join a club and you're taking more trips and you're upgrading your wardrobe. And again, this gets back to like all these things you think you deserve. Well, one of the things I wanted to touch on is this idea of like family money. And there's nothing to be ashamed of if you inherit money or if your parents gift you. All you say is thank you. It really does help catapult you into a different stratosphere when it comes to wealth. But if you put your head in the sand about it, you're going to feel stressed and guilty, and you're never going to come to terms with the beauty that this money can bring to your life. So I have a lot of clients that come to me and they feel guilty that they get, oil royalties, or the family owns a farm somewhere and there's a big trust fund and they get a payout once a year. Or it's a generation skipping trust. And I hope that I help them feel at peace with that and happy with it because it's a resource. It's not something that should be ignored because you feel guilty or you don't understand it. This is like even more responsibility for you to get your stuff together and understand like, how does this fit into your overall picture? Does that mean that you don't have to save above and beyond your 401k or SEP IRA for retirement because you've got this potential family money and maybe you can use it to renovate a bathroom or take a nice trip? That's okay. But we have to understand what your financial resources are so that you can enjoy using them.
Well, I think you talked a little bit about personal trauma with finance, and we always think about the negative trauma of coming from no money, right? But there's also a population out there, I guess, that has a complex relationship with money. We just did our Succession episode talking about the Roy family, right, in HBO's Succession. And it's like, well, when money's used as a weapon within a family or something for control, there's a whole nother set of trauma that comes along with that. I mean, talk about first world problems, but there can be things that I think we wouldn't necessarily think of, or I wouldn't necessarily think of as a regular person having to worry about how my trust fund was weaponized against me or something like that. But that's very valid.
Well, the chief money officer of Domain is Joanne Bradford, and she and I talk a lot about money. She's amazing. And we've been kind of drafting a book together. And we've both, between the two of us, have some really good stories. And there's this kind of section, and we talk about it all the time, about like the bad boomer and how like the bad boomer doesn't communicate with the younger generation about like what's to come. And there's this, trillions of dollars of wealth transfer that's
It's going to be the
supposed to
biggest
happen.
wealth transfer in history.
And then the next one will be the biggest, right? Just
That's
from
right.
a population
Millennials down to
standpoint.
Gen Alpha, but the boomer to millennial wealth transfer.
Well, I thought that
is now
millennials are poised to, maybe it's because of that wealth transfer.
because of the boomer wealth
It
transfer.
is. Okay. Got it. That they were poised to become the wealthiest generation.
And do they feel equipped is the question. If
Nope.
their parents don't talk to them about money and don't explain the different types of accounts. And like you guys were saying earlier, you're not going to listen to your parents anyway. So who can you talk
Sorry,
to?
Dad.
Who can you talk to get informed about this?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The challenge too is that the rules of the game are constantly changing and the goalposts are moving. So just as millennials were entering the workforce, we had the global financial crisis. And just as we were coming of age and having children, we had the pandemic and all these things. And now housing prices have exploded. So as we were poised to, be able to be comfortable and live the American dream in a house, now no one can afford to live in a house, right? So there's all these challenges, and every generation has their unique challenges, right? I think millennials were guilted into like, oh, you spend too much money on avocado toast and specialty coffee or whatever it was, right? That everyone was complaining about. And so I do think that we talked about individual baggage with money, but there's also these overwhelming, I think, like cultural issues for each generation that they have to overcome because of the broader macro environment, because of the educational environment, all these different things that are constantly shifting. And I think that's something that you probably need to be uniquely attuned to, what the zeitgeist is, right? What that generation is struggling with.
Yeah, the house one you mentioned is for real. Like that's definitely happening now, where people feel like they saved a couple $100,000 for the down payment on a house and now they can't get the house.
It gets them nowhere. And I mean, there's really two classes of people in America. There's people with a 2 handle on their mortgage, and then there's everybody else.
Yeah. And one of the things that I partner with Money with Katy, she has a podcast as well. And we talked about renting versus buying. And how this whole American dream about buying a house isn't necessarily right for everybody. And we're kind of at a stage in the economy right now where rent is cheaper than owning a home. And depending on where you live, like in San Francisco, it's been that way for a long time, right? Yeah. I mean, you can buy
New York City.
New York City is a great example.
A teeny tiny POS and spend $1 million, or you can probably rent a nicer place and spend less money, right? So factoring in when is that tipping point, again, that gets back to financial planning. Like, what is that number? Is it like, okay, as soon as I'm paying $5,000 in rent, it makes more sense for me to buy? Or is it $7,000? And kind of given the increase in your rent on an annual basis, what's your ramp? Is you ramp like, I could rent this place for the next 5 years and it still makes more sense for me to rent than buy a home? Or is it 16 years? Or is it 20 years?
Yeah. And I think it's also then if you're taking your money out of the stock market and putting it into a physical asset, do you think that that's actually going to appreciate? I mean, because my husband and I, and Jen knows this, we bought our place in New York City in like 2015. And it was probably the worst investment ever for a variety of reasons. But also, like, had we not put our money into a physical asset, I mean, what it would have done in the stock market would have been amazing, right? And yes, had we bought our place outside of New York City and like the burbs, also it would appreciate it a lot. But again, in the city, it's like you have 9% commission going to the brokers and to all the fees. And then you have the HOA fees, and then you have the interest you're paying. Like, it's all these things. And it's like, again, that cash that you put as a down payment could have been working for you in a different investment. So the view of investing in real estate and like owning a home is the American dream. It is true that for most people, it's been a very good source of wealth creation, but depending where you live, maybe it's not. So
timing is everything. It's not only like when you buy, it's how long you're going to stay. So like if you're a family of 4 and you outgrow your 2-bedroom in quicker time than you expected
family of 5 that outgrew your 2-bedroom, Kristen.
Yeah. So, I mean, that puts you in a tough place. Whereas like normally I recommend my clients stay in their house for 5 to 7 years just to make back those transaction costs. But I do think that like, I love the real estate analysis. I love looking at that. Love looking at buying rental properties or, even, what does it cost to own a second home? Because that question comes a lot. Or what if we moved to North Carolina from New York? Or what if we moved to like Texas or Washington where there's no income tax? Like, what does our life look like then? The house, though, is the only thing on your balance sheet you get utility from. It's the only thing you get to use. So sometimes, and I do have a lot of renter clients that have a lot of housing insecurity. They're worried about being evicted. They're worried about the building being sold and having to relocate 2 toddlers. And sometimes alleviating that stress, homeownership is the only way out of it.
I mean, that's why we bought our place in New York. It wasn't because we were like, this is an amazing investment. It was at the time we had just this terrible situation with a landlord and were so traumatized and knew we needed a place to live and just didn't want to have to deal with a landlord. But it's true, you need a place to live.
I mean, it's one of those things that, you may need to keep the house for 20 years. Maybe you rent it out to somebody else. And looking at how does real estate play into like your overall asset allocation on your balance sheet? Does it make sense? I have some clients that are like, all I want is real estate. I don't trust the stock market. And I'm like, ooh, when you see the returns of the stock market versus like real estate, depending on where you are, that's hard to swallow. But I always go with like where my clients want to go. I'll be the voice of reason. But if they're really into real estate, I'm going to try to help them figure out like diversification, buying multifamily homes instead of single family homes. And it's all about cash flow and seeing where that goes.
Well, this has been phenomenal. Any kind of parting words of wisdom for young people who are thinking about pursuing a career as a CFP or thinking of hiring one?
So for people looking to get into financial planning, we need more people. We need diversity. We need more women. And it's a great second career. So it was a second career for me, maybe kind of like a third career for me. And so it's never too late to get into financial planning. I think that one thing we alluded to earlier is what is it like for somebody coming in? This is a profession where you can be very entrepreneurial. So when I first started my practice and had 2 little kids, I worked 25 hours a week. That was my goal. I was on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. Sometimes I made house calls to clients, but that was a great fit for me. And so if you're looking for flexibility and looking to be able to build something and help people, it's a great career to get into. When it comes to hiring a financial planner, like if you find yourself in that point where money is stressing you out, and you don't want it to anymore, and you're willing to invest in yourself and that mental health, then finding a financial planner, that's a good fit for you. Like to me, it's all about personality and fit and making sure what the financial planner is offering meets your needs is the most important thing to decide.
Love it. Do you have social media? How can our listeners find you?
Domain Money, we have an Instagram, and then on our website, domainmoney.com is a great place. You can set up a consultation. Like I love talking to people, even if it's about creating a career in financial planning or to hire a financial planner. Once you start the conversation, shows that you're ready to make some change. So that's always the first step, is just get yourself out there, be willing to keep an open mind and an open heart when you're talking about your money issues. So if you're kind of blocked off and you're not ready, then it's not the right time. But when you are ready and you're ready to find that peace instead of being stressed, financial planning can help you do that.
I love that. Well, we're going to link Domain Money in the show notes for the show. And Katy, thank you so much for your contribution. I learned a lot. We still have so much.
I know I want both of you as clients. I feel like it can help you.
I know, exactly right. It's one of those things. It's really hard and humbling to say, hey, I know all this stuff, but like, I don't know that much about my personal finances. That can be really humbling to say. And I think that's okay if you're in that position. You can be the smartest person in the world and you don't know everything, right? And this is one of those places where you can get help and it's okay.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Katy. It was a pleasure meeting you. We're so grateful for your contribution. Thank you so much.